Speak up, guys. In today's video, I'm going to share with you an impressive story of overcoming a near-death experience that will leave you with goosebumps. The protagonist not only faced moments of intense pain and dependence, but also had a frightening revelation about the future of our planet. If you want to know what he discovered about a secret global plan and what could happen in September 2024, stay until the end. And of course, leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell so you don't miss any content. Hello, my name is Thatcher Whitmore. I never thought I would be here telling this story, but life has these surprises, doesn't it? Well, let's go. I'm an ordinary guy from Boulder, Colorado. I'm 42 years old, I've been married to Ava for 15 years, and I work as a civil engineer. At least that's how I saw myself until 2011, when everything changed. You know, I've always been one of those skeptical, down-to-earth guys. He believed in what he could see, touch, measure. My life was pretty normal. I woke up early, went to work, came home, had dinner with Ava, sometimes went out with friends on the weekend. Nothing extraordinary. I liked mountain biking and hiking. I really enjoyed the mountains here in Colorado. It was a good life, you know? Simple, but good. I was never much of a church person or a believer in supernatural things. My grandmother Helen was very religious, but I always thought it was something for older people. I respected it, of course, but it wasn't for me. I thought that when we died, that was it. End of the line. No lights at the end of the tunnel, no encounters with dead relatives, nothing like that. But then came that day in 2011, the day that changed everything, the day I almost died. And man, it wasn't just a scare, you know? It was an experience that turned my life upside down, that changed everything I thought I knew about life, death, and what comes after. I don't really know how to tell this story. It's difficult to put into words something so intense, so out of the ordinary. But I'll try. I'm going to tell you exactly what happened to me, how I lived, how I felt. I'm not here to convince anyone of anything. I just want to share what I went through because, well, it's too big to keep to myself. So if you are there, preparing to hear my story, know that it is not a fairy tale. There are difficult, even painful parts. But there's also hope, there's love, well, you'll see. I just ask that you listen with an open mind, because what I'm going to tell you completely changed my view of the world and life. And who knows, it might change yours too. It all started on a Wednesday afternoon. It was a day like any other, you know. The sun was shining, the sky was blue, a typical Colorado day. I was coming home from work, driving Highway 36 between Denver and Boulder. I remember thinking about dinner, what I was going to do over the weekend. Normal stuff. Suddenly everything changed. It happened so quickly that to this day I have trouble remembering exactly what happened. I know I saw a car coming towards me, too fast. I tried to dodge, but bam! The impact was brutal. I remember the sound of metal twisting, glass breaking. The world spun. My car rolled over once, twice, 3 times. I don't know. I lost count. When everything stopped, he was upside down, restrained by the seatbelt. The pain, man. The pain was something I had never felt before. Mainly on my left leg. I looked down and, well, it wasn't a pretty sight. There was blood. A lot of blood. And my leg, it was at a weird angle, you know? At that moment, I knew it was serious. I tried to move, but every movement was agony. The smell of gasoline and burning rubber invaded my senses. I heard distant voices, people screaming, sirens. But it all felt so far away, as if I were underwater. The paramedics arrived. I vaguely remember them talking to me, asking me to stay awake. But it was difficult. The pain was so much that I just wanted to sleep, escape it all. They took me out of the car and put me on a stretcher. Every movement was torture. At the hospital, it was a rush. Doctors and nurses everywhere. Exams, more exams. I heard words like open fracture, emergency surgery, risk of amputation. Everything seemed like a nightmare, but I couldn't wake up. The surgery lasted hours. When I woke up, Ava was there holding my hand. His eyes were red from crying. She was the one who told me what the doctor said. The fracture in my left leg was very serious. They had managed to save the leg, but the recovery would be long and difficult. Very difficult. The next few days were a blur of pain, medications, and more surgeries. Every day felt like a battle. The pain was constant, relentless. The doctors did what they could, but, man, it was hard. Very difficult. It was during this period that I started taking strong painkillers. At first, they were a welcome relief. They helped me bear the pain to get some sleep. But I soon realized that I was becoming dependent. I anxiously waited for the next dose, counting the minutes. It was scary, but I saw no other way out. The pain was too much. The following months were a roller coaster. Physiotherapy, more surgeries, endless appointments. Little by little, I got better. I managed to return home, walk again, even if with difficulty. But the dependence on medication, that remained. And it got worse and worse. I knew I was on a dangerous path. Ava knew it too. She tried to help me, support me. But I was stuck in a cycle that seemed to have no end. The pain, the medicine, more pain, more medicine. It was a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. And it was like this, in this state of physical and emotional fragility, that I reached the turning point. The day I almost died for the second time. The day everything changed again. It had been almost a year since the accident. I can't say I was fine, but I was managing. I still had pain, I still depended on medication, but at least I was able to do some everyday things. Until one Sunday morning, I woke up with a cough. At first, I didn't think much of it. I thought it was just the flu, you know. But things got worse quickly. The cough wouldn't stop. I started to have a fever. I felt weak. The pain in my leg, which had eased a little, returned with a vengeance. Even taking the medicine, nothing improved. Ava was worried. Very worried. She insisted on taking me to the hospital. I was reluctant, a stubborn man thing. But she gave no option. And it was a good thing she insisted, because when we got there, man, things got ugly. The doctors did a lot of tests, X-ray, CT scan, blood tests, and their faces weren't good. They said something about a serious infection that had spread. My lungs were compromised. The whole body, in fact. Doctors said words like sepsis, multiple organ failure. I didn't understand everything, but I knew it was serious. Very serious. They put me in an ICU. Tubes, machines beeping, nurses coming in and out all the time. Ava wouldn't leave my side, holding my hand. I saw the fear in her eyes, even when she tried to smile and say everything was going to be okay. The hours passed and I felt worse and worse. The fever didn't go down. Breathing became more difficult. The doctors were talking about transferring me to a bigger hospital, with more resources. They said it was my only chance. It was during this transfer that everything happened. I remember being in the ambulance, hearing the sirens in the distance. Ava was there, holding my hand. I felt strange, as if floating. The pain was gone, but I felt distant from everything. And then, man, it's hard to explain. It was as if someone had turned off a switch. Suddenly everything went dark. I no longer heard the sirens. I no longer felt Ava's hand. It was as if I had disappeared. But it wasn't the end. In fact, it was just the beginning. The beginning of a journey I never imagined I would take. A journey beyond life, beyond everything I knew. What happened next? Well, it's hard to believe. I sometimes wonder if it was real. But it was. And it changed everything. Absolutely everything. Suddenly, in the blink of an eye, I was no longer in the ambulance. It was as if I had left my body. I could see myself there, lying on the gurney, the paramedics working frantically, Ava crying. But I was out, floating above it all. At first, it was scary. I mean, how was that possible? I must have been dreaming, hallucinating. But it felt so real. I could see everything with incredible clarity. Every detail of the ambulance, the expressions on the paramedics' faces, even the sparkle of tears in Ava's eyes. I tried to talk to her, to tell her that she was there, that she was fine. But my voice, well, I didn't have a voice. It had no body. It was just consciousness, pure consciousness floating there. And then I felt something pulling me. It was like an invisible current, dragging me away from the ambulance, away from everything I knew. I resisted, tried to stay close to my body, close to Ava, but the force was too great. I started to move, fast, very fast. The world around me became a blur. Colors, shapes, lights passing at incredible speed. It was like being in a tunnel, being sucked into some unknown place. And then it stopped. Everything became calm. I was in a different place. It wasn't anywhere I recognized. It was like being in the middle of nowhere, but at the same time, it was everything. I could feel a presence. Something big, powerful, welcoming. That's when I saw the light. It wasn't an ordinary light, you know? It was something alive, pulsating, full of love. I felt drawn to her, as if she was calling me. I wanted to go there, immerse myself in that light. But something held me back. A voice, no, more than a voice, a presence. Familiar and at the same time, transcendental. It was my grandmother Helen, but not as I knew her, old and frail. She looked young, radiant, full of life. She smiled at me, a smile full of love, of understanding. And then she spoke. Not with words, but directly in my, well, I can't say mind, because I didn't have a body. It was more like her thoughts were mine. "It's not your time yet, Thatcher," she said. "You have much to do, much to learn, much to teach." I wanted to argue. He wanted to say that he was tired, that he wanted to stay there in that place of peace. But before I could, well, think that, I felt something pulling me back. It was like he was falling through layers and layers of reality. I don't know how to explain. All I know is that in an instant I was back in my body. The pain returned, the sounds of the ambulance, the smell of antiseptic. I opened my eyes. Ava was there, crying with relief. The doctors looked surprised. Apparently I had died. For a few minutes my heart had stopped. But I was back. And nothing, absolutely nothing, would be the same as before. You know, when people talk about near-death experiences, it's usually about light, peace, reunions with loved ones. And yes, I had some of that. But there was more. Much more. And not everything was pretty or comforting. After that moment of peace, that meeting with my grandmother, something changed. It was as if I had been thrown somewhere else. A dark place, cold, scary. At first it was just darkness, a darkness so dense that it seemed to have weight. I couldn't see anything, but I could feel it. And what I felt, man, it was terrible. Fear, anguish, despair. It was as if every negative emotion I had ever felt in my life had been amplified 1,000 times. And then I started listening. They were not normal sounds. They were screams, regrets. The kind of sound you hear in nightmares, you know? But it was real. At least it felt too real. Little by little, my eyes, or whatever I had in that state, began to adjust. And what I saw, man, it's hard to describe. It was like being in the middle of a whirlpool of shadows, dark shapes moving around me. Some appeared to have faces distorted into expressions of pain and anger. I tried to move, to get away from there, but it was like he was trapped. The more I fought, the closer those shadows got. It was suffocating, claustrophobic, and the smell, my God, the smell. It was like rot, sulfur, things that shouldn't exist. It invaded my senses, left me nauseated. I don't know how long I stayed there. It could have been minutes, hours, days, or an eternity. Time didn't make sense in that place. It was an endless cycle of fear and despair. At some point, I realized I wasn't alone. Were there other people? Souls? I don't really know what to call it. But they were there, trapped like me. Some screamed for help. Others seemed to have given up, floating silently like empty shells. I tried to communicate with them, but it was impossible. It was as if each of us was trapped in our own bubble of suffering. Isolated, but aware of the presence of others. It was more torture. Do you know what was worse? The feeling that I deserved to be there. It was as if every mistake I ever made, every bad thought, every moment of selfishness, all of it was amplified. I felt guilty, embarrassed, as if that place was exactly where I was supposed to be. But there was one thing, a little light in the middle of all that darkness. My grandmother's memory. From her face, from the love I felt in that brief moment before I fell there. It was like an anchor, you know? Something to hold on to when all seemed lost. I focused on that memory whenever I could. It was difficult. The shadows, the screams, the despair. Everything tried to make me forget. But I clung to that memory with all my might. And then, something changed. In the middle of that darkness, I saw a point of light. Small at first, almost imperceptible. But it grew. It was as if he was tearing apart the very reality of that place. I don't know how to explain what I felt at that moment. Relief? Hope? Afraid it was just another illusion? Probably a little of all of that. The light grew, became stronger. And well, this is where things get even harder to explain. Because what came after? Man, it changed everything. Absolutely everything. So there I was in the middle of that personal hell when suddenly, light. But it wasn't just any light, you know? It was something alive, pulsating. And from that light, a figure appeared. Look, I know this is going to sound crazy. Believe me, I still have a hard time believing it myself. But he was an angel. Not those cute little angels we see on Christmas cards, you know? It was something powerful, majestic, scary even. He had a presence that was difficult to describe. It was as if he filled the entire space, not just physically, but spiritually, you know? I could feel the power emanating from him. It was overwhelming. And his eyes. Man, his eyes. It was as if they could see right through me. As if they knew every thought, every secret. I felt exposed, vulnerable, but at the same time, safe. Because along with all that power, there was compassion. A love so deep that it made all the suffering I was feeling seem small. The angel did not speak. At least, not with words. But I could understand everything he wanted to say. It was a direct communication from, well, soul to soul, I guess. With a simple gesture, all those shadows, all those horrors that surrounded me, disappeared. It was as if they never existed. And I saw myself being lifted up, taken out of that place of despair. It was an indescribable feeling. All the weight, all the darkness, gone. It was as if I was being cleansed, purified. Every part of my being was being, well, I don't know if healed is the right word, but it was being transformed. The angel took me to a different place. It wasn't the heaven, as we imagine, with clouds and harps. It was more like a state of being, a place of absolute peace, full understanding. And that's when I saw her again, my grandmother Helen. But this time I was able to spend more time with her. Talking, if I can call it talking. It was more like an exchange of thoughts, of feelings. She hugged me. And man, that hug. It was as if all the love in the universe was concentrated there. I felt safe, loved, understood. All doubts, all fears, disappeared. Helen told me, not in words, but I understood, that my mission on Earth was not complete, that I had an important purpose to fulfill. He didn't give me details, but he made it clear that I needed to go back. I confess that I hesitated. That place was perfect. The idea of going back, of facing all the pain, all the struggle, Wasn't easy, but I knew, deep down, it was the right thing to do. Before letting me go, the angel, well, he showed me something. Something that completely changed my view of the world, of life, of everything. It was as if, for a brief moment, I could see the entire web of existence, past, present, future, everything interconnected. And in the midst of it all, I saw something specific, something about the future, about an event that would take place on September 14th, 2024. I can't go into details. Honestly, I'm not even sure I understand everything. But I know it's important. Crucial even. Then, as quickly as it had started, it was over. I felt a force pulling me back. I heard Ava's voice, distant at first but growing louder, and then I opened my eyes. It was back to my body, back to life. But nothing, absolutely nothing, would be the same as before. Returning was not easy. Not easy. Just imagine, one moment you're, well, in what I can only describe as a spiritual dimension, and the next, bam! You are back in your body with all the pain, all the discomfort. When I opened my eyes, the first thing I saw was Ava. She was crying, holding my hand. Doctors stood around looking, well, shocked is an understatement. Then I found out that I had been dead for a few minutes. Clinically dead. They were about to give up when suddenly I came back. The first few days were a blur. Exams, more exams. Doctors coming in and out of the room, asking questions, checking monitors. I was still very weak, I could barely speak. But inside, man, inside I was boiling. How do you explain to someone that you saw the other side? That you've been to a place beyond life and death? At first I didn't even try. He remained quiet, responding only as necessary. I think everyone thought it was just the shock, the trauma of the experience. But as I got better physically, it became harder to hold on. I needed to tell. I needed to share what I had experienced. Ava was the first person I spoke to about this. I remember being nervous, afraid that she would think I had lost it. But you know what's amazing? She believed in me. I don't know if he understood everything, but he believed. Physical recovery was slow. My body had gone through enormous trauma. The infection, the cardiac arrest, all of this left consequences. I had to relearn a lot of things. Walking, for example. It was frustrating at first, but every little bit of progress was a victory. The hardest part, however, was dealing with the medications. After everything I had seen, everything I had experienced, the idea of becoming dependent on painkillers, man, it was unbearable. It was quite a fight, I'll tell you. I had to look for alternatives, meditation, yoga, alternative therapies. Some worked, others not so much. But little by little I was able to deal with the pain in other ways. And you know what's curious? The more I got off the medication, the clearer everything I had experienced on the other side became clearer. It was as if a fog was lifting from my mind. The memories, the sensations, everything became clearer. I started talking more about my experience. With friends, with the therapist, I started seeing. Some people thought I was crazy, of course, others were fascinated, and some seemed to recognize something in what I told them, as if they had also gone through something similar but never had the courage to speak out. Little by little I adapted to my new reality, because that was it, you know? A new reality. I wasn't the same Thatcher I was before. That experience had changed me profoundly. The way I saw the world, how I related to people, how I faced life and death. Everything was different now. And in the middle of it all, there was that revelation, that knowledge about the future that the angel had shown me, about what would happen in 2024. It was like a weight, you know? Something too important to keep to myself, but at the same time, how can I tell the world something like that? That's when I realized my mission, the purpose that my grandmother had told me about. This was what it was about. I had come back not only to live my life, but to prepare people, to share what I had learned. And that's how I started my journey. A journey of healing, discovery, and preparation, because something big was coming. and I somehow had been chosen to be part of it. You know when they say that a near-death experience changes a person? Well, it's not an exaggeration. Nothing is exaggerated when it comes to this. My life took a 180-degree turn after that day. The first thing that changed was my view of death. Before, I was afraid. Very scared. It was something I avoided thinking about, you know. But after what I've experienced, man, death has lost its terror. Not that I wanted to die, far from it. But now I knew it wasn't the end. It was more like a passage, a transformation. Another thing that changed radically was my spirituality. Look, I never went to church, as I said. I thought it was all just talk, you know? But after seeing what I saw, feeling what I felt, I could no longer deny that there is something beyond what our eyes can see. I didn't become a card-carrying religious person, but I developed my own spirituality, a connection to something bigger. My values and priorities also took quite a shake-up. Things that once seemed so important, money, status, material possessions, suddenly seemed insignificant. What mattered now was love, relationships, doing something meaningful with my life. I started to value time much more. Every day was a gift, an opportunity. I started living more in the present, appreciating the little moments. A sunset, a laugh from Ava, the smell of coffee in the morning. Everything took on a new meaning. My relationship with nature has also changed. I began to feel a deep connection with the world around me. Every tree, every animal, every drop of rain. Everything seemed to be part of a complex and beautiful web of which I was also part. And people? Man, my view of people has completely changed. I began to see each person as a unique, precious soul. Even those people who I previously found difficult or unpleasant. Now I could see beyond appearances, understand that everyone is on their own journey. My empathy increased 1,000-fold. I could feel other people's pain in a way I had never felt before. Sometimes it was too much, you know? I had to learn to deal with this new sensitivity. Another thing that changed was my relationship with time. Not just everyday life, but time in a broader sense. Past, present, and future seemed more fluid, more interconnected, especially with that vision of the future I had been given. It was as if I could feel the weight of the story and the promise of what was to come. My curiosity also exploded. I started reading about everything: quantum physics, philosophy, ancient religions, other people's near-death experiences. I was thirsty for knowledge, to better understand what had happened to me and what it meant in the grand scheme of things. And you know what's craziest? I started to have, well, I don't know if I can call them powers, but they were certainly abilities that I didn't have before. Sometimes I knew things I had no way of knowing, or I felt things about people, about places. It was scary at first, but little by little I learned to deal with it. All of this together made me feel different. Sometimes I felt out of place, as if I no longer fully belonged in this world. It was difficult to relate to the everyday concerns of the people around me, but at the same time, I felt more connected than ever to something bigger, something universal. And in the middle of all this, there was that mission, that purpose that I knew I had to fulfill, the responsibility to share what I had learned, to prepare people for what was to come. It was a huge weight, but at the same time, it gave my life a deep meaning. It was as if I had been reborn, not just physically, but in every way. Old Thatcher was left behind. This new me. Well, he was on a completely different journey. After everything I've experienced, everything I've learned, I knew I couldn't remain silent. I had an important message to share. But man, it's not easy to go around saying that you died, went to the afterlife, and came back with news about the future, you know? At first I was very cautious. I only spoke to people close to me, people I trusted. The reaction was always a mix of fascination and skepticism. Some thought I had gone completely crazy. Others were curious and wanted to know more. And some, Some seemed to recognize something in what I was saying, as if they too had been through something similar. Ava was my biggest support at this stage. Not only did she believe in me, she encouraged me to share my story. "If this happened to you," she would say, "it must have a purpose. People need to listen." I started slowly. Small groups, informal meetings at home. I told my experience, talked about the changes I had noticed in myself and in the world around me. And of course, he talked about what he had seen about the future, about the event that would take place in 2024. It was interesting to see how people reacted. Some were skeptical, of course. Others were frightened by the idea of such big changes coming. But many felt hope, as if deep down, they already knew something like this was about to happen. Over time, the circle grew larger. Friends brought friends. Acquaintances heard about it and asked to participate. Soon, I was speaking to larger and larger groups. There came a point where I had to rent larger spaces to keep up. I'm not going to lie, it was scary at times. I wondered if I was doing the right thing, if I wasn't going crazy. But every time I hesitated, I remembered that experience. From the angel, from my grandmother, from the immense love I had felt. And I knew I had to continue. I started receiving invitations to speak in other places. Spiritual groups, holistic centers, even some more open churches. Each place was a different experience. Some people welcomed me with open arms, others with suspicion. But there was always someone who connected deeply with the message. Local media started paying attention. There were some articles in newspapers and interviews on local radio. Nothing big, but enough for more and more people to know about it. And you know what's craziest? I started receiving messages from people from other places. People who had had similar experiences, who had seen similar things about the future. It was as if a network was forming. A network of people who knew something big was about to happen. Of course, not everything was rosy. There were people who accused me of being a charlatan, of exploiting people's faith. Some even threatened prosecution. It was difficult, painful even. But I knew I had to continue. The most complicated thing was talking about the 2024 event. I didn't have all the details, you know. It was more of a feeling, a certainty that something important was going to happen. Something that would change everything. Some people wanted to know exactly what it was, where it was going to happen. Others thought I was predicting the end of the world. I tried to explain that it was nothing like that, which was more about a change, a transformation, that yes, it could be scary, but it was also full of possibilities, that we needed to prepare not with fear, but with hope. Over time, I learned to adapt the message, speaking in a way that people could understand, that wouldn't scare them so much. It focused more on the idea of personal growth, of connection with something bigger, on the importance of cultivating love, compassion, understanding. And you know what? The more I talked, the more I understood. It was as if every conversation, every lecture, every discussion helped me process what had happened, to better understand what I had seen, what I had felt. It was not an easy task. There were days when I was exhausted, physically and emotionally. Days when I wanted to throw everything away and go back to my normal life. But whenever I thought about giving up, I remembered that light, of that immense love I had felt, and I found the strength to continue, because deep down I knew I was doing exactly what I was supposed to be doing, fulfilling my purpose, preparing myself, and helping others prepare for what was to come. So here we are. It's been a few years since my near-death experience, and a lot has changed. My life took a turn I could never have imagined. From skeptical engineer to, well, I'm not sure how to define myself right now. Messenger, preparer, whatever it is, I know I'm on the right path. As we approach 2024, the sense of urgency only increases. It's like I can feel the energy changing, you know? As if the whole world was preparing for something big. Sometimes it's scary. Other times it's exciting. A lot of people ask me if I'm afraid. If not, I'm excited about what's to come. And yes, of course, sometimes there are butterflies in your stomach. After all, we are talking about a huge change, something that will affect everyone. But you know what? What I feel most is expectation, hope, because what I saw, what I felt on the other side, man, it was incredible. It was pure love, total connection. What if what's coming is a chance for us to get closer to this here on Earth? So it's something to celebrate, not to fear. Of course, not everyone understands this. There are a lot of scared, anxious people. And that's why I keep talking, keep sharing. Because people need to know they are not alone, that there is a purpose in all of this. Lately, I've been feeling like things are intensifying. More and more people are having dreams, visions, inexplicable experiences. It's like the veil between the worlds is getting thinner, you know? As if that reality that I experienced was getting closer and closer to ours. I try to prepare the best I can. I meditate every day. I try to stay connected with that energy I felt. Sometimes I get glimpses of, well, I don't know if I can call it the future. They are more like possibilities, paths that can open up. Ava has been my rock through this entire process. She not only supports me, but has become an active part of this journey. Together, we have explored different spiritual practices, looking for ways to raise our consciousness. It's amazing how our relationship has deepened through all of this. As for the 2024 event, well, I still don't know exactly what will happen, but the feeling is that it will be something global, something that will affect everyone in one way or another. I don't think it will be catastrophic in the sense of destruction, but it will certainly be transformative. I have a feeling it's going to involve some kind of revelation, as if a greater truth about our existence, about the universe, was going to be revealed. Something that will fundamentally change the way we see the world, how we live. And you know what's craziest? I have a feeling that it won't just be us humans involved in this. That vision I had, of more evolved beings. I think they will play an important role. Perhaps we will finally have open contact with other forms of life, other consciousnesses. It's a lot to process, I know. Sometimes I get a little dizzy thinking about all this. But deep down, I feel peace. Because I know that whatever happens is part of something bigger, something good. So while we wait for 2024 to arrive, what can we do? Well, in my opinion, the best preparation is to work on ourselves. Cultivate love, compassion, understanding. Connect more with nature, with the universe around us. Being open to new possibilities, new ways of seeing the world. And above all, don't be afraid. Fear only paralyzes us, prevents us from growing. What's coming? Well, it could be intense, it could be challenging, but it's also an incredible opportunity. A chance to evolve to become something greater than we ever imagined. So that's it. We are on the threshold of something incredible. And you know what? I'm grateful to be here, for having had this experience, for being able to share this message. Because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, isn't it? To share, to connect, to grow together. The future is coming. And boy, is it going to be amazing.